voy a dar la palabra a la Association for Human Rights in Kurdistan of Iran, Geneva. Por favor.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Association for Human Rights in Kurdistan of Iran, Geneva, would like to draw the attention of the Council to the situation of Kurdish people facing major humanitarian crisis under the rule of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Iran is a party to 5 of the nine core international human rights treaties, including ICCPR and the Geneva Convention of 1949. Despite its international obligations, Iran's constitution, Articles 1, 4, 12, and 15, deprive its ethnic members of political participation. Iran's deliberate policies of denying the rights of ethnic groups constitutes a major source of grave humanitarian crisis and human rights violations. Its targeted persecution creates instability not only for the state and its diverse fabric of society, but for the region as a whole. Iran's hostile and discriminatory policies have dramatic humanitarian consequences on Kurdish people and other minorities. For instance, the Islamic Republic has planted 20 million landmines in Kurdistan during the 8 years of Iran-Iraq war. But 27 years later, after the end of the war, due to the government's unwillingness to join the Ottawa Convention and to clean Kurdistan from landmine, we have observed over 10,000 civilian casualties, and 43% of the victims are children. The Islamic Republic has also established mandatory revolutionary courts to execute drug-related offenders and muharaba, an imaginary crime against God. This state-sponsored violence also constitutes a major humanitarian tragedy and a clear violation of international law. Since the inception of the Islamic Republic in 1979, 15,000 prisoners, mostly belonging to Kurdish people and Afghan refugees, have been executed for and under the cover of drug-related offenses. In August this year, and despite the High Commissioner's warning, Iran committed mass and summary execution of 20 Kurdish prisoners for muharaba and continues the blind killing of Kurdish border tradesmen. Such killings have triggered serious concern that ethnic war can spiral in the region. We ought not to forget that the worst cases of massacres in this century, including the genocides of Rwanda and Srebrenica, were triggered by ethnic tensions. In respect to the environment, the Islamic Republic of Iran ignores the United Nations experts' warnings and continues to divert the rivers in Kurdistan and to neglect the lake of Urumia, which has dried up and is threatened of droughtiness. This policy has already caused the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people and constitutes a major environmental disaster for the Kurdish people. Ultimately, we demand the international community, and in particular the EU government, to factor human rights, including the rights of ethnic groups, into all bilateral dealings with Islamic Republic. Thank you very much.
Por esta declaración, y ahora voy a dar la palabra al último, paréntesis, al Ahwaz Human Rights Group, que es el último que tengo en la lista.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Shema Silavi from Ahwaz Human Rights Organization. I'm speaking on behalf of the Ahwazi Arab ethnic minority. Residing mainly in the southwest of Iran, the Ahwazi Arab are one of Iran's most disadvantaged and most persecuted ethnic group. Arabs estimated to be between 5 to 7 million, or about 10% of the population of Iran, who live in the southwestern regions of Iran, in the province of Khuzestan, or also called by its indigenous name Iqlim al-Ahwaz, or Arabistan. Ahwazis constitute an indigenous, ethnic, national, and linguistic minority in Iran. Historically, this indigenous Arab community has been marginalized, excluded, and discriminated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. It is a principal criteria that any participant in the UN fora should use the recognized reference to the geographical names and regions of the UN members, and to observe the territorial integrity and sovereignty of states. Hence, please remind the speaker to respect this issue and to refrain from using the fabricated names regarding the Iranian territories. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson.
Muchas gracias. Seguimos pidiendo lo de siempre, que es una estructura de diálogo y también tener en cuenta algunas de las apreciaciones que se hacen para que este diálogo se profundice. Voy a pedir a la representante de la organización no gubernamental que siga teniendo la palabra y que se atenga a las normas de procedimiento que intensifican el diálogo en este recinto. Por favor.
Though this province accounts for up to 90% of Iran's whole GDP, the towns and cities populated by the Ahwazi Arabs in Khuzestan province continue to bear the scar of the Iran-Iraq War of the 1980s, where many Ahwazis, including my relatives, have been killed. During the Iran-Iraq War, the geographic location of Khuzestan caused the province to suffer a great deal of environmental damages, the effects of which are beginning to affect the health of the population. Residents of the war-torn Arab cities of Khafajiyah, Falahiyah, Shadegan, and Susanger suffer from unusually high rate of skin, heart, and kidney diseases due to continued storage and use of chemical and biological materials and other related pollutants remaining from the war. Ahwazi Arab farmlands are heavily contaminated with industrial pollutants and the detritus of war, leading to serious birth defects as well as skin and respiratory diseases. The government has not taken any action to remedy the situation. According to the Human Rights Watch report, millions of landmines remaining from the Iran-Iraqi war in the province of Khuzestan killed and maim indigenous inhabitants and in southwestern areas every day, most of which are girls and boys who work in the fields. In the case of any natural disaster also, the Iranian authorities do not provide any support or aid to the affected indigenous citizens and farmers. The flood that hit the Ahwaz region earlier this year and devastated farms and homes have caused 10.5 trillion Iranian rials of damage, according to the latest estimates. Ahwazi farmers complain that only 10% of the funds dedicated to drainage project over 550-hectare region were actually spent. That means the farmers had to foot the bill for the destruction of their homes and farms as a result of maladministration and corruption. As after 30 years, we have not been provided any answer to why and for what reason we are fighting to hold on our national identity, culture, and language, while the state has excluded us from the Iranian landscape, politically, economically, and socially. And if you think that what I'm stating here is hyperbole or exaggeration, please look at the reports that the Iranian have supported, these blue booklets, where every city and every province is detailed according to the ethnicity and religion. But the only city and the only province that is not stated is Ahwaz and the province of Khuzestan. No mention of Arabs at all. And I think the report confirms my statement. Thank you.
Muchas gracias por esta declaración. Tengo que dar la palabra ahora al Balochistan Human Rights Group, por favor.
Muchas gracias, Señor Presidente, Madam Special Rapporteur of the Secretariat. My name is Munira Shirani and I represent Balochistan Human Rights Group. Balochistan is rich in natural resources such as gas and coal. But in reality, the Baloch people live in the poorest and least developed region of Iran. The economic crisis which Iran is facing is 5 times more extreme in Balochistan. The Baloch, an ethnic minority in Iran with its own culture and language, are deprived of equal education, economic as well as political participation. Attempts in recent years to set up poetry nights, cultural events, newsletters in Baluchi have all met severe punishment, as the organizers have been incarcerated and in some cases executed, all of this in the name of national security. Baloch children do not have a connection to their language or history. All traits of Balochistan are being erased. A strong cultural cleansing campaign is taking place to eradicate their identity. Women in Iran, due to their gender, are not equal in law. Baloch women suffer multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination. Baloch women are discriminated based on their ethnicity, Baloch, religion, Sunni, language, Balochi, and consequently not given the opportunity to participate in decisions affecting them. In recent years, executions of prisoners have risen to the point that last year more than 900 prisoners were executed in Iran. Just this year, 39 Baluch male prisoners have been executed. There are too many cases of the death sentence being carried out without legal representation, forced confession, and even cases where the courts have not followed the protocol of the legal system in the country. These executions, often based on juvenile arrest, torture, and unfair or non-existing trials, show total contempt for the rule of law. Whole male populations in a village in Balochistan have been executed following Iran's war on drugs. This has a devastating effect on the Baluch community, as families are losing their breadwinners. The protection of Baluch, both physically and as a minority group, should be a priority for the state. With the lack of media coverage, the Baluch are forgotten, as the state can ignore the security and the rights of the Baluch. Balochistan human rights groups recommend that pressure is put on the state to follow legal procedure and guarantee that all prisoners have a fair trial and access to the judicial system, that the UN investigates death penalty procedures in Iran, that the Special Rapporteur on Minority Rights investigates in the situation of the Baluch community in Iran. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now give the floor to the Association for the Human Rights of the Azerbaijani people in Iran.
Thank you, Mr. President. Drying up of Urumia Lake, a natural catastrophe as a case study. Deliberate negligence of Iranian authorities in planning and taking into account the obvious and scientifically proved ongoing or future natural disaster and catastrophe, such as drying up of Urumia Lake in the Azerbaijani region of Iran. Regardless of the repeated early warning by academic, individual and source, international organizations such as the United Nations Specific Agency, vigilant civil society, including many Azerbaijani civil rights and environmental activists, and not the least local authorities has been a key concern affecting lives of millions of people. Peaceful assembly and demonstration by Azerbaijani, including civil rights and environmental activists, under the humanitarian umbrella slogans such as Save Lake Urumia, has unfortunately resulted in brutal repression, arrested and detention of many activists. We believe, based on the scientific studies available and per local knowledge and information, that Urumia Lake catastrophe is not a direct product of climate change, and or decline the average annual rainfall, not only because the nearby one lake in the neighboring Turkey has remained intact and lives, which enjoy the same climate. We claim that many deliberate exploited dam building projects implemented mainly by the construction companies attribute in or affiliated to the Iranian Revolutionary Guardian Corps. What has come to the mind of Azerbaijani civil rights and human rights activists as the dominant theory is that Iranian regime is attempting to deliberately destroy natural resources and cultural heritage of Azerbaijani in Iran as an inhuman tool and deterrence strategy to make Azerbaijani more vulnerable to both natural and made.
Thank you. I now give the floor to the Ahwaz Delegation and Human Rights Foundation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My name is Karim Abdian, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Ahwazi Arab or Iranian minority group in Iran. Ahwazi Arab minority in Iran suffers from identity crisis among other socio-economic crises. Residing mainly in southwestern Iran, their population is about 5 to 7 million, or 10% of the population. The province's name, however, has been changed from Arabistan after 600 years to the Persian name of Khuzestan. This was done to deny their Arab identity. Mr. Chairman, Iran is a very diverse country indeed, where Kurds live in Kurdistan, Baluch live in Balochistan, Lor in Lorestan, Turkmen in Turkestan, and so on. Only Arab province was changed. I wonder why. An enduring solution would be then to change the name to its original name if there is any consideration. Arab majority Khuzestan province accounts for 90% of the oil revenue, yet the people live in abject poverty. Ahwazi Arabs have not been allowed to participate in running their own affairs. It does not have local or genuine national representation. It faces a systematic forced assimilation, ethnic cleansing, and confiscation of its land. A legislation to allocate 1.5% of the oil revenue to the Arab area has been denied repeatedly by the Iranian Majlis or the parliament. Arabs and all other non-Persian languages such as Kurdish, Turkish, and Baluchis are banned, therefore denying their linguistic rights and their competitiveness in the job markets. Khuzestan political, military, and security commanders, officers, mayors, and all high and mid-level government officials have been consistently appointed from non-Arab groups. Mr. Chairman, you can hear me and you can see me. Obviously, I am real. Yet, me and my people have been denied their existence. In this booklet that was produced,
Muchísimas gracias. Y ahora voy a dar la palabra a la última intervención en la lista.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Chairperson, with respect to some references made by certain groups and ethnic communities, I shall emphasize that my country is proud of all its citizens. Meanwhile, they have done their utmost efforts for the progress and development of the country and protecting it. While the Iranian noble ethnic groups were constantly defending their country during imposed war, they always raised this big question, that where those individuals and so-called NGOs who claim that are representing them, including in this forum, have been. Our nation is quite confident that they were and still are cooperating with the aggressor, forming terrorist groups to stay against Iranian people, including ethnic groups, and pursuing separationist activities. It's regrettable that the terrorists who have committed murder, killed innocent people, exploded public places, and carried weapons and explosives be named as Arab, Baluch, Kurd, or Azeri activists. They may not and shouldn't introduce themselves as representatives of different great ethnic groups of Iran, since they have no stance among them. Mr. Chairperson, a very mockery allegation was raised on planting landmines by Iran at this forum. It's an undeniable and evidence-based fact that Saddam regime planted around 16 million landmines in an area of a large area in Iran during the 8 years of imposed war. However, without international cooperation, over 99% of the contaminated areas were cleared by Iran itself. In this context, Saddam has also used chemical weapons against Iran, including in Sardash city, which culminated to the killing of more than 13,000 and wounding of 100,000 innocent people. Mr. Chairperson, against what was raised by a few in this forum, ethnic groups are not minorities in Iran, but they form the majority of the country. Under the constitution, Farsi is the state language and script, yet use of the local and ethnic languages in the media and their teaching in schools is permitted and encouraged. It's worth mentioning, for example, Kurdish and Azeri are taught in universities also.